Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Because of the Libyan crisis this week, I've had an opportunity to put forth an analysis in a number of venues, some interviews with Informativo Pacifica, KPFK Los Angeles on Monday evening, an interview with COP in German, which was posted, I believe, on Tuesday. On Tuesday, I was then on with Alex Jones, both before and after this earthquake we had here in these parts. 25 minutes on Press TV on the afternoon or evening of the 23rd, and Rents from 11 o'clock to midnight. Then on Wednesday, Kevin Barrett's Truth Jihad Radio, 2 hours. Then a little bit later, East Village Radio with Joshua Reyes and others. That was in the evening. And then yesterday, Thursday the 25th, we had Russia Today, direct with Moscow. There's also in the works a Russia Today Arabic service appearance. Press TV, short interview in their news. Independent Network News with Tom Kiley. An interview with Kopp again in German at the end of the day. So that will all be reflected sooner or later on tarpley.net. Let me also announce on September 11th, I will be joining INN, that's Tom Kiley, Lenny Charles, Val, and others in Manhattan for their all-day-long symposium seminar on 9/11. I'll be on one of the panels. They will have a studio audience, and that will be broadcast, so that will all be available. And there are also, I think on September 21st, I'm going to be on an FM radio station in Paris, France, and that will be en français. So this is now coming up, and I'll have some more to say about 9/11 in a minute. But let's now look to Libya. This has obviously been a tragic week for Libya, but maybe not in the way that NATO would have liked. Let's just see what happened. These events seem to be now in the distant past, but they've just happened. Part of this is based on Thierry Maison's reporting, Franklin Lamb's reporting, Lizzie Phelan, Darius Mahdi, Nazem Rouaya. We're concerned about the personal security of all of these people. Some of them have been threatened. According to their reports, they accuse CNN correspondents of delivering threats to them, saying, cut off your anti-NATO coverage or you may be in danger. So let's see what happened here, starting in particular on Saturday. This is called a coup de main, a Handstreich. It's a quick surprise move that's designed to paralyze, in this case, the Gaddafi command structure with shock, but they haven't succeeded, and the shock is now wearing off. First of all, carpet bombing. Daily Telegraph boasts that Royal Air Force was bombing with Paveway 4 bunker busters. The Royal Air Force Brimstone system was raining down death on civilian populations on the road leading into Tripoli from the west. I've traveled it myself. Apache helicopters were strafing civilians with machine guns to open up the way for these rebels, or Tebels as they're sometimes called, terrorist rebels. These are al-Qaeda killers, make no mistake, with a larding of golden youth, revolutionary enthusiasts, or whatever they are, or tribal vendetta artists. They're there too. The big difference was that on Saturday evening at 8 p.m., when the hour of iftar marked the end of the Ramadan fast, renegade mosques all over Tripoli put out the call to rise up against Gaddafi. This was then underlined by a speech by the vermin Jalil from Benghazi, saying you have to rise to the occasion. So he's calling for an insurrection. These are pre-infiltrated death squads that then simply open fire on civilians. The civilians, in many cases, shoot back with their own Kalashnikovs. So the net effect of this in the night between Saturday and Sunday is limited, because a lot of these death squads get cut down by armed Libyan civilians defending their homes and defending their families. Then, at the same time, though, we've got an amphibious landing. The NATO fleet, we don't know how many, 15 warships are off that coast. They use amphibious landing craft to land more death squads of al-Qaeda terrorists under the command of NATO officers, European officers, in many cases, therefore, the absolute colonial model of what it used to look like in these parts of the world. This was then accompanied by Al Jazeera putting out fake stories that Gaddafi had left the country, that Saif, Mohammed, and Khamis Gaddafi had been captured, that the Khamis brigade had capitulated. All false, all completely hooked up, big lies, electronic information warfare. The NATO electronic warfare was putting out text messages saying it's time for Gaddafi to go, SMS, and Libyan television, of course, was bombed. This was then credited to the rebels. Yeah, right. Not the rebels, but NATO bombing. This is a NATO operation from beginning to end. It is Operation South Mistral, Operation Harmattan, and this particular phase is called Operation Mermaid Dawn. Some say Operation Bride Dawn. I think Operation Siren is better. The sirens are the ones who lure the gullible mariners and sailors to their deaths on the rocks, and maybe that's something for the NATO fleet to consider. This obviously achieved tactical surprise because it obviously relied on a logistics which is far beyond what the rebels had previously had. However, as we see from other military examples, if you don't get 100% victory, if you don't win completely with this kind of a thing, the fact that your forces are actually weak and disorganized as the aggressor will eventually become clear to the temporarily stunned adversary. So the Gaddafi command structure did not disintegrate. Some units became disoriented, and some of them may have temporarily disintegrated. But as the stun effect wears off, then you can rally. You can rally, provided that you have the moral fiber. We'll give some examples from the American Civil War. And the way the rallying has worked is the presence of defiant rallying figures. In particular, when Saif Gaddafi appeared at the Rixos Hotel in the night between Monday and Tuesday, he immediately tore the mask off the entire Al Jazeera, BBC, CNN, Voice of America, Big Lie campaign. And let's also not forget this Hurrah Libya, the free Libya of the CIA and the State Department. This was a real epiphany. When Saif came there to the Rixos, smiling, relaxed, supported by armed people, about to go on a tour of the city. Some journalists went with him. This proved that this entire thing was a big lie. Now, at that point, some soldiers who had thrown away their uniforms, I think, went out and tried to find the uniforms and put them back on. In the night between Tuesday and Wednesday, another figure of great courage, Musa Ibrahim, the information minister, put out his own call for resistance. And now between Wednesday and Thursday, we've had, I think, 3 radio broadcasts by Gaddafi himself. On Wednesday saying, look, I have left this compound, but this is a tactical move. That's quite right, the tactical move. And on Thursday, 2 more, calling for resistance, and above all for the allied tribes to march on the capital and to envelop these Libyan, not the Libyan forces, but the Benghazi rebels, the al-Qaeda forces. So that, I think, is some idea of it. Now let's just look at some of the military examples here. It's clear that the nature of the war has now changed. Up to now, Gaddafi has been forced to defend relatively fixed lines, and that's a disadvantage because you're under this NATO bombardment. Any fixed position is going to be bombed to kingdom come by the NATO Air Force. Up to now, that has been the lot of the Gaddafi forces. They've had to defend population centers. Now this has flipped. It's now the rebels who have to defend population centers, whereas the Gaddafi forces go into a war of movement where they can strike where they want to. They don't have a geographic basis anymore. You don't want to defend a compound like that because you hunker down in that compound. NATO's going to bomb you. You don't want to defend any city, Sirte or any place else. That will simply lead to NATO bombing. But now it's a war of movement where the rebels have got to man the checkpoint, and the shots will be coming at them out of the dark. We'll be back in just a minute. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. We're trying to push ahead rapidly because of the wealth of material today. Operation Mermaid Dawn, Operation Siren. We're told that, the U.S. decided to go into Libya because the Gaddafi forces were at the gates of Tripoli, the gates of Benghazi, the gates of Benghazi, the gates of Benghazi. Well, unfortunately, the British-French attack was stipulated in a treaty signed November 2nd, 2010, Operation South Mistral, a military adventure by the old Suez imperialist colonialist coalition of NATO, the Colonel Blimps and the French colonialists joining together, the guys who had gotten kicked out of Vietnam and were about to be kicked out of Algeria, the unreconstructed guys, not the de Gaulle, the enemies of de Gaulle, the Vichysois, not de Gaulle. So one of the big things about this is the first films of the Al Qaeda rebels arriving in Green Square were shown on Al Jazeera, and it's a fake. It is a complete fake. Take a look at this. It's on the internet. Look at my Twitter feed. You'll find a link to it. I've been in Green Square. Green Square is old. Green Square. Some of those buildings go back to the late Roman Empire. We're talking 400 to 500 A.D. And they have gotten nicked along the way. And there are architectural features on there which the Emir of Doha in Qatar, he obviously didn't get the right firm to do this for him. They made what amounts to a Hollywood set, a soundstage, and they've got the entire thing faked, except that it looks too freshly baked. It looks like freshly baked gingerbread. It's clean, it's neat. Some of the structural features are wrong. They're small mistakes, but you can see them. And above all, there are some embellishments and ornaments and decorations on the walls that they decided not to reproduce. It's a dead giveaway. It is a Hollywood set. So they got a bunch of maybe unemployed actors from Beirut or someplace like this to get dressed up to try to sound like Libyans, shoot off some Kalashnikovs. This was done. So Al Jazeera is exposed before the eyes of the world as an absolute kitchen of lies. How can anybody believe these people? Why don't they go hide their heads in shame? Is it possible to wither away from shame? They should. All day Thursday, we're told, Gaddafi has been trapped. Gaddafi has now been encircled by rebels in these buildings near the compound. And the hours go on, and the hours go on. And then it becomes, at least one son of Gaddafi has been trapped by the rebels. And the hours go on. And then later on, only pockets of resistance by the rebels remain in the entire city. What a tissue of lies. You can't believe any of this stuff. And the problem is the recurring human impulse of gullibility to believe it. Don't believe it. Stop it. Dr. Shakir and others had warned the Libyans about this Hollywood set. He even said, one day we're going to have heavy air attacks. The electricity is going to go off, the Libyan television is going to go off, and they're going to show you from the NATO television, this hurrah thing, and Al Jazeera, they're going to show you the capture of Green Square, but the Green Square is located thousands of miles away in Doha, Qatar, and that is exactly what they did. So the gay girl in Damascus School of Journalism goes on and on. Now, the other themes that we're getting. How about the Imelda Marcos shoe collection theme? Imelda Marcos, you'll remember 25 years ago, the Anglo-American media went wild that Imelda Marcos had, 1,000 pairs of shoes. A clear Nuremberg crime, I'm sure. But now we're told, Gaddafi has a luxury RV. Gaddafi has a picture book of Condoleezza Rice. Gaddafi has a lavish lifestyle. He's a sybaritic guy. This is absolutely crazy. I've been in some of those villas that were bombed out. There's nothing special. I told you at the time. It looks like a kind of a upper middle class TV room. The room where he received foreign guests was quite modest. There's no gold, no diamonds built in. This is not Bokassa, that creature of the French from Central Africa some decades ago. Nothing like this. This is relatively restrained. Compares favorably to various Anglo-American bigwigs, right? You want to go? Let's go visit the homes of these Wall Street characters and see how they live. So the usual, in other words, the usual garbage. Now here we are in Washington D.C. Earth, wind, and fire threaten us. We've had an earthquake. We had a mild earthquake here on Tuesday. Cracks appeared in the Washington Monument. A bad omen. A bad omen when the cracks appear at the top of the Washington Monument. Wind. We've now got a hurricane bearing down on us, one of the most severe. And that will lead to huge losses, which will then be reflected in a collapse of insurance stocks next week. And that will be the fire. The fire will consume part of the New York Stock Exchange and related speculative enterprises. Are we dealing with divine retribution? Is this God's punishment for messing with Gaddafi? Well, time will tell. Always worth putting out these interesting questions. Now, we're told that the occupation is coming. We're told that United Arab Emirates, monarchist, reactionary forces are going to be brought in, 10, 20, 30,000 troops, to install a reign of terror in Tripoli, to go and root out the Gaddafi supporters, to hunt them down and kill them. Will advanced, progressive Libya, Arab socialism, number 57 on the World Human Development Index, beating out much of the world, beating out 120 or 130 countries, beating out Russia, beating out Ukraine, beating out Brazil, beating out everybody else in Africa, Nigeria, South Africa, beating them all. Will they accept the yoke of these monarchists from these horrendous feudal relics that the British have preserved out there in the Gulf? I can't imagine how they would. And we're also told now that the Al-Qaeda government, with the frontmen Jalil and Jabril, but with Hifter, the CIA heavy, the enforcer, slightly off the center of the stage, but still there in the shadows, keeping these other guys covered, they want to impose Sharia law. Sharia law. Now, what would that mean? Having been in Libya, I can tell you the society, essentially, it looks like the Western world in many cases. The status of women is probably the most advanced anywhere in the Arab world. It was also fairly advanced in Iraq. I think Libya was always ahead of Iraq in these areas. So now we're supposed to have Sharia law and go backwards. The fate of women? Wasn't this the big story in Afghanistan, that women were being oppressed by Islamic fundamentalists? Well, now, here's an example of an Al-Qaeda government that wants to bring Sharia law to Libya, which does not have it. And it's a secular state now, but with the if the Benghazi Al-Qaeda people get their way, the beards, then this will turn into something, I think, quite retrograde from that point of view. The comparison, I think, arises with the Vandals, and by this I mean the Vandals coming out of Central Asia. Around 400 A.D., slightly ahead of Genghis Khan, and indeed pushed forward by Genghis Khan and his Huns, we had another rather unsavory group of people, rather destructive, the Vandals, and their name has become a word in English in many other languages to give the idea of a barbarian who destroys civilization. NATO is now so politically bankrupt that it turns to Vandals. In other words, Al-Qaeda troops under European officers as the infantry, because they're too poor to afford infantry and politically incapable of motivating this kind of thing. We've now got the emerging Vandal terrorist kingdom of North Africa under Al-Qaeda auspices, and this will be Tunisia and Libya, and it will try to extend it to Algeria and try to extend into Egypt. The Vandals, the Al-Qaeda Vandal terrorist kingdom under the aegis of NATO and, of course, the International Monetary Fund. Notice that when the rebels got to Tripoli finally, the leading edge of the Al-Qaeda advance into Tripoli was Tarhouni, the finance minister, the banker's boy. He was there to reassure the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. So it's Tarhouni who proclaims Al-Qaeda rule in Tripoli. I'm reminded of the time that guy Grassi from the New York Stock Exchange went into the jungles of Colombia to meet terrorists. This is the way the world works. Read Machiavelli. This is the essence of this kind of an operation. So the problem with the Vandals, though, is once they get control of North Africa, they take over Sicily, Corsica, Sardinia, and then they go and sack Rome. So get set for Al-Qaeda piracy in the Mediterranean, get set for invasions of some kind into southern Europe. And watch out, France, because you're there, too. Back in a minute. Welcome back to our second hour here on World Crisis Radio. Follow everything that you hear here on Tarpley.net. If you want to hear more commentary about the Libyan events, again, there's a wealth of material from my media interviews and other things that I've done. Take a look also at the Twitter feed, Webster G. Tarpley. That's if you want to follow it hour by hour. That was a lot of action on that Twitter account on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, when this new phase was opening up. Al Jazeera attempts to treat the war as what it was, a war in which Gaddafi had to defend fixed positions. It is not that anymore. It's not a matter of fixed positions for Gaddafi. It is for the rebels. The war is now a war of movement. And the goal of the Gaddafi forces, quite simply, is to kill as many of the rebels as they can. And I think this is the untold story. How many rebels have been killed? In the past couple of weeks, we began to get reports of very heavy casualties among the rebels. They would take a city, but they would pay 100 or 150 dead in the process. How many rebels were killed now in the destabilization of Tripoli, such as it has been? What is the morale now of the rebels? Think about the last scenes of the old Lawrence of Arabia movie, right? After they take Damascus with the help of the British Army, a little bit before the British Army, and they have this council, and basically after a while, everybody goes home, right? Anthony Quinn is looking for loot, and once he gets loot, he goes home. Well, these rebels have now looted Tripoli to a large degree. They've looted all the hotels. They've got a whole bunch of computers and Gaddafi memorabilia and so forth. Will they go home? Have they had enough? They're going to say now their chances, if they're supposed to be standing in Tripoli overnight at a checkpoint, maybe that's a little bit too dangerous for some of them. The idea, they've been the blitzkrieg so far. They've been the invading hordes. Now they're going to have to do garrison duty and stand there and do guard duty and get pot shots taken at them. Maybe that's not too attractive. The other thing, of course, is that the factions that are clear in this congeries there in Benghazi, these will explode. They'll start killing each other. They already have. Hifter masterminded the plot to kill Yunus with the help of Jalil, with the help of some others. Tarhouni was probably involved in that too, the defense minister, and so forth. Won't this dissolve into complete chaos? If you do bring in United Arab Emirates troops, those are foreign monarchist troops. They will not be welcome. And if the French insist, if Sarkozy really goes for a flight forward and brings in the French Foreign Legion openly with amphibious landings, then that will be the signal for a lot of Kalashnikov action. So it's better not to go down this road. This is folly. Didn't we learn anything in Vietnam, in Iraq, in Afghanistan, and in so many other places? It's time for a ceasefire, what Musa Ibrahim called for, and some kind of negotiation. And again, if the NATO forces pull out, the rebellion collapses, even at this point, and more than ever perhaps at this point. NATO has a reconsideration meeting coming up. What are the Dutch going to do? The Canadians, the Italians, will they drop out? Now, the Italians. Jabril was in Italy this week. You're going to now see a big anti-Italian campaign because there's going to be a big rivalry between France and Italy to see who gets the loot, or in other words, whether Eni, the Italian oil company, will be able to keep its presence in Libya or whether they will be kicked out and supplanted by the French. The Chinese have already been ousted. The Russians have already been ousted. Will Italy also be ousted? So the Italians are now paying tribute to the new Vandal kingdom. In Rome and in Milan, Jabril received assurances that he would get money from the Italian government and that he would get free gasoline for the entire foreseeable future from Eni as a token of Italian friendship. So let's see what happens. Notice also that the Washington Post and others are now, suddenly there's new interest in the anti-Berlusconi scandals, right? We've now got the story of Nicole Minetti being described here in the Washington Post. I won't go into this in detail. This is the same stuff with, remember the one with the Wait for Me in Putin's Bed, and then the Ruby Rubacuori. Why these scandals against Berlusconi? Is it a little bit like Lewinsky? Is it an intelligence operation designed to entrap him and weaken him? I think so. And WikiLeaks, of course, getting into the action. Remember, compared to Sarkozy, Berlusconi is a choir boy. He's an innocent babe. The Chronicles, and I'm working on trying to get these ready for distribution. The Chronicles of Sarkozy's corruption, the Babylon, and this monstrous cesspool of corruption in the Élysée Palace, and before that in Neuilly-sur-Seine. The corruption of Sarkozy is legendary. They say Berlusconi frequented prostitutes. Well, that's one thing, but to marry one and make her first lady of France, this is another story. So this entire complex, I think, deserves also some very, very skeptical attention. Get ready for a big campaign attacking Berlusconi, and the idea is they're not going to tell you that this is designed to help Sarkozy's grab. Sarkozy's approval rating's extremely low. DSK, Dominique Strauss-Kahn, now released, and of course it proves that this entire thing was an intelligence operation by the CIA run through the New York City Police Department. Remember that Strauss-Kahn was on his way to Berlin to meet with Merkel, and an envoy was ready to go to meet Gaddafi to set up some kind of pilot project for an alternative reserve currency system, and for that they needed the Libyan oil. This played a very important role in what has happened. Now, just one or two other notes on the Libyan situation. I expect this to become a kind of urban guerrilla warfare, a kind of perhaps a new kind, something that we haven't seen yet. So we have to look at this very, very carefully. The entire province of Fezzan. You'll notice that even the Al Jazeera films show that there's a special rage by these racist al-Qaeda rebels from Benghazi against black Libyans. There's an entire province of Fezzan. Those people are Libyans, they're Arabs, and they're black. Will they accept the yoke of these terrorists from Benghazi? I really doubt it. And that's a lot of southern Libya, and it shades over into nearby countries. We've also got the first reports of massive atrocities by the rebels. 30 Libyan army soldiers massacred by the rebels. How about that massacre? Is there any responsibility to protect them? These are the people this is the kind of murder and mayhem that NATO now relies on. It's their stock in trade to impose this bankrupt imperial system on independent states and to attack them. There's also going to be, of course, the UN General Assembly next month, and there may be moves on the part of various African states to condemn, at least at the level of the General Assembly, the kind of thing that NATO has been doing, obviously abusing the UN mandate. So there's much more to say about this. Maybe just one other thing: the comparison from the U.S. Civil War. You look at the Battle of Shiloh in 1862. Look at the Battle of Cedar Creek out here in the Shenandoah Valley in 1864. In the case of Shiloh, it's the Confederates under Johnston who managed to surprise the Union forces of Grant and Sherman and drive the Union from the field. They're routed, but they are then rallied by these commanders, Grant and Sherman, with the help of some others, Lew Wallace and a few others. They then return to the battlefield and defeat the rebels. Another very dramatic example in the case of Cedar Creek. Jubal Early and his Confederates do a surprise attack on the Union camp of General Phil Sheridan in the Shenandoah Valley, October 1864. They achieve complete surprise. They drive the Union forces from the field en route, but then they stop to loot. They're so hungry that they stop to loot the Union camp. This allows Sherman to get on his big black horse Rienzi, ride down the road, rally the forces, counterattack, and drive the Confederates from the field. So all you need is a defiant rallying figure, and I see several. I see Gaddafi, I see Saif, I see Musa Ibrahim. So these examples might put it all in perspective. Back in a minute. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. So it's the presence of the defiant rallying figure, the Grant, the Sherman, the Phil Sheridan, heroes of the American Civil War. Even after a stunning surprise attack, you can regroup and rally and carry the day. And as Phil Sheridan wrote in his memoirs, some of the guys who had thrown down their guns were then the key to the counterattack. So you can redeem yourself, right? Think of it also, think of the red badge of courage. The guy runs away, and then he comes back full of fight. The question is the moral quality. Where is the moral quality? I don't think there's any question. It can't be with these al-Qaeda fanatics from Benghazi led by the pasty-faced bureaucrats like Jalil, these slimy figures, but it's rather with some people of actual stature who have raised their country from rock bottom on the Human Development Index, or before there even was one, to the most advanced society in Africa, who built the great man-made river. So that's, I think, all that needs to be factored in.